Hello, this is Pam from Patient Advocate Match, where we have a lot of healthcare resources at your fingertips. And today we are so blessed and so excited to visit with Kathy Mangan. She is the founder and CEO of Laying Groundwork. And I'm going to just jump right in. Kathy, welcome. We're so glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about what is Laying Groundwork and how that got started.
Sure, absolutely. Pam, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to have this little conversation. It's always, I love talking about the things that really are inspirational to me. So this is going to be fun, I think. If
Absolutely.
nothing else, right? It's going to be really
Yes.
fun. So to start out and answer your question, Laying Groundwork is a benefits corporation. And so what that means is that it is a for-profit business that has a ancillary social good purpose associated with it. So we also have an associated nonprofit, and the work, regardless of which side of this is on, is really all around trauma resilience and self-care and using mind-body modalities to better, take care of ourselves. So the Laying Groundwork side of things is really focused on the opportunity to work with and support people in the helping professions. Okay. And part of the reason that I am really interested in doing that and really dedicated to working with that group of people is that's where I started. I started in private practice. I had a body-based somatic practice for many, many years, and then kind of transitioned into an energy medicine practice, but it was all one-on-one private practice work. And from time to time, I would think, there's just so much to do, for people who are trying to take care of other people, help other people, because that's what we're trained for. That's what we're all about. And, the day-to-day running of the business and, taking care of that, and then trying to have a life, right? Trying to, have your garden and make sure that you're taking care of yourself and eating well and, doing the things that we need to do to support ourselves. And so what started to happen to me, and part of the reason that I said, I'm going to stop private practice and I'm going to start doing what I learned to be such a help to me. I always kind of say, this is the stuff that saved my bacon, right? And so it proved itself to me, and it became really obvious that my next stage in my career, if you want to call it that, was to be in a presenting, facilitating, teaching opportunity and work with other helping professionals, people who are still in that industry, to hopefully keep them from going down the pathway that I went down, because I was really, really close to just frying. I always kind of thought about my brain synapses just kind of go, kind of a thing.
Sorting out. Yeah.
Just burning out. Yeah. Like literally as kind of what it felt like. So I'm, that whole backstory, and I think that personal experience of really recognizing, secondary trauma is a real thing. Burnout is a real thing, and it's not just terms that we see in the newspaper or hear about on a podcast. These are real lived experiences for and I think especially for people in helping professions.
So Kathy, being a nurse and working many, many years in a hospital setting, I've worked in home health, I've worked in hospice. What can people in the helping professions, whether it's being a therapist or a nurse or a social worker or any other one of the many people, or just a personal care worker, what are some of the signs? What do you start to see with people that are approaching that burnout? What is there something we can do to start recognizing that?
Right. Well, I think, so I think it's also interesting to take a look at some of the more recent literature that has come out around, these terms that we use. So I'm going to start us by talking about that first, Pam, because I think it helps us to understand that this is kind of a you can almost look at it like a progression of sorts. Okay.
Mhm.
So one of the things that can happen first, it doesn't always happen in this order, and it doesn't have to happen in this order, but it does for a lot of people. And this was my experience personally, was burnout happens first. And so burnout tends to be kind of, loss of motivation, not interested in what you're doing anymore. It seems kind of like, kind of a thing. And it many times is based in the fact that, and all of us will experience this, of course, is that we do a lot of stuff on a day in, day out basis that doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter, right? We're not feeling satisfied. We're not feeling fulfilled. And so it's really easy to just kind of go into this stage of being kind of not motivated, just not interested, kind of a thing. And what I found when I would go into that, state of being, is I switched jobs, right?
Mhm.
So I went someplace else because I'm thinking it's the job that's a problem, right? And turns out, I figured out, like, how many ever jobs later, that apparently I was taking my stuff, I was taking me to all of these jobs, and they all ended up the same way, right? So, kind of noticing that kind of thing first can be really, really useful when you find yourself in this pattern. And then, what this research is showing is that once we're already there, once we're kind of burning out, and we kind of are just kind of about our work, that secondary traumatic stress is a lot more likely to take hold in somebody who's already burning out than it is in somebody who's not, right? And so we define secondary traumatic stress as the symptoms that look just like people who are in firsthand trauma or stress, right? So it's all the stuff that you would expect. You would expect, a elevated heart rate. You would expect, anxiety. You would expect stress-related illnesses. All of the things that we know kind of go along with that kind of place in our nervous system. So secondary traumatic stress looks just like firsthand stress. Okay. But it's coming to us via somebody else, so it's us being in the room. I used to always say this to my clients is, people don't come to see us because they're having a great day. We're many times seeing people when they are really in pain or really struggling with, emotional struggles, physical struggles, both emotional and mental pain, of course. They're anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they're all of these things that, and then they have the story, okay, the event that took them to whatever, whatever state they find themselves in. And of course, it's our job as helping professionals to catalog that. We have to be aware of, who's walking in the door and what's their story. So that's kind of where the whole secondary traumatic stress comes from, is listening to sometimes really, really, really difficult situations that people find themselves in, or things that have happened to them. So, unless we're really aware of the fact that of course is a very real thing, and it can show up in a multitude of ways. There's actually some interesting secondary traumatic stress self-evaluation scales that you can access. And there's, I use them, with the people that I work with, but they're just available online. But, they show up as, when this difficult stuff is going on for somebody, do you just kind of like shut down? Does it become what's called intrusive? So does it interrupt your life? So what are the ways that how do you respond to this? What do you do when you're faced with that kind of thing? And then that helps us kind of figure out, it's like, okay, so this is your main strategy here. So let's equip you with some tools to help you not do that anymore. Right.
That's awesome. And, I know when we were visiting before, there's a lot of things, a lot of discussion about, self-care. What is
Right.
self-care? And I know we talked a little bit about, we hear that, the girls at work, oh yeah, I'm gonna spend a day at Sundara, which is a local spa, or I'm gonna go get a
Right.
mani or a pedi. And, we talked about that, but talk about the difference between what that might be as, a fleeting self-care versus an enduring self-care. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, of course. Yeah. So I think anytime that we do something that we put ourselves first, I clump that in the self-care category. That goes in that box for sure. But I think the thing that is important, and this is another kind of an evaluation that I like people, again, it's a self-report kind of a thing to take a look at, is if all of the things that you are doing are in the kinds of things that you described, Pam, so getting a mani-pedi, going to the spa for a spa day, getting a facial, whatever, binging on Netflix, whatever that happens to be for you. I'm not at all saying that that's not okay. I mean, I would never say that. But what we have to recognize is that if that is all you are doing, if all of your self-care kind of clumps into that, as you put it, fleeting category, then what we have is we don't have a foundational basis to really institute really enduring self-care, the kind of stuff that changes our thinking patterns, the kinds of things that that we take advantage of reprogramming through neuroplasticity, our thought patterns and how we respond and react in our world. And so these foundational things are, we have to have those as well. And I, and that's kind of the drum that I tend to beat more, because what I figured out was that's the stuff that I kind of wasn't taking care of. So I wasn't looking at that, and I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't taking care of business. Let me just say that.
So Kathy, what might be an example of more of an enduring self-care, or what
Sure.
should it look like?
Should it look, well, I don't ever want to.
There are no shoulds. I should not have said that. No pun intended.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Well, so there are lots and lots of things that fall into that category. And of course, there are some really basic things that we need to be, and all of us know this. And so I spend zero time working with people on the basics, like, okay, so make sure that you're, moving your body every day, make sure that you're eating a healthy diet most of the time, make sure that you're sleeping well. I mean, those things, and all of us know that. I mean, all of us know that. So, it's recognizing that those things then allow us to actually take better care of ourselves in these other realms that I do work with. So the things that fall into that kind of second tier of self-care are things like contemplative practices, for example. So working with, for example, learning how to, be aware of body sensations so that I can actually be proactive on my own behalf. So if I feel a specific sensation coming up in my body, then, I know that that's going to go over here to some kind of outburst that's not going to be skillful. So I can catch it before it goes there. So you can learn to do that kind of thing. Contemplative practices help a lot with that. So specific kinds of meditation practices. Certainly we do a lot of writing, a lot of journaling. So those kinds of practices are useful for us to get a better sense of what's actually going on in our thinking process. And I like to think about it, a lot of people don't like to journal per se, or they just, like stare at a blank piece of paper and what do I do with this? kind of a thing. But the idea being that, so if you can think about it this way, that the brain really likes things to be organized. Really just likes, I mean, it's kind of yes, no, right, wrong, it's in kind of that category. And so the idea here is that when there is a lot of unreally processed stuff going on, so we have constant swirling thoughts, especially if there's anxiety, there's like all of this swirl and the kind of the hamster wheel of worry, all of that kind of thing. And it's very, very, very hard to, when you're in that state, to come up with anything cogent at all, because there's just all this other stuff in the way. So what we find is that many times there are specific journaling practices that you just get all that out on a piece of paper, right? And the goal is and this is a timed exercise. It's actually pretty fun. You get it all out, and then you kind of look at it and kind of think, all right, is there anything of value in here anywhere? Is there a word or a phrase or a thought or something that's valuable? And if it is, certainly set that aside as useful. And then the rest of it, I like to suggest that people do something kind of ritualistic with it and either burn it or stick it in stick it through the shredder, because it's just junk. And so the kind of some of the practices that help us just kind of declutter our thought processes to be useful.
That's an awesome thing. So what usually, or what kind of responses do you get from people when they've gone through that exercise with you, or what do you notice? How do you see the benefits of it? I mean, it sounds amazing.
It actually is pretty interesting. Well, I always ask the people that I am working with to always start with beginner's mind. So I ask them to try everything, recognizing that not all of the skills that we're going to learn over a period of time together are going to be valuable for them right now. Okay. But I want them to not prejudge the experience to the best of their ability, of course, and just see what happens, just see. And it's very interesting that when we can, not just them out there, but us, myself as well, when we can kind of set aside whatever preconceived idea that we might have about, well, that sounds stupid, or I've done that before and it doesn't work, or whatever we're thinking about, we start to realize that, maybe this wasn't useful for me 5 years ago or 2 years ago or last year, but right now, it's actually useful, right? And so what people find is that if we can do that, if we can, to the best of our ability, just try it with no expectations of it being great, not great, helpful, not helpful at all, just try it, that then all of a sudden we start to be able to expand our ideas about what's useful to us and what isn't. So I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
So Kathy, what kind, when with your business, what kind of people do you work with, or how do people utilize your services? How does that work?
So I have a couple of things. There are a couple of things that are going to be available here soon. So there's an option of actually doing I have a little 4-week, hour-and-a-half a week series that I do. So people are certainly happy, I'm happy to have them hop into that. I do that fairly regularly. And then also, I'm in the process right now, it's not ready quite yet, but I'm in the process of putting together an on-demand series that people can just access, on their own time, and go through the process just, via video. And my hope is with that we would be able to take people who are actually going through that on-demand process, for anybody that's interested in having, a live discussion group, because those have been very, very valuable in other projects that I work on. Just, having people talk about, I tried this practice and it worked great for me. And somebody else saying, well, that's really good that you approached it that way, because I think that was my problem. That's why it didn't work very well for me. I'm going to try that again. So it's those discussion groups are less about me facilitating anything and more about people creating some community around the things that they are trying to do to take better care of themselves. So that's coming. I'm kind of thinking probably after the first of this year.
Mhm.
And then I also do offer an immersion that is a 4-month weekly we take a really, really deep dive into aligning with our values, identifying, having our identity really set so that it's about us, not about so our work becomes an expression of our identity, not the other way around.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it sounds like a subtle difference, but it makes a big, big difference. Makes a big difference for people.
And Kathy, being a nurse and working with a lot of healthcare professionals and also helping to coach, like adult children of aging parents, and a lot of these adult children are caregivers.
Absolutely.
And they don't have the luxury of being able to walk away and change jobs or do things like that. So is your company able to help those caregivers? Okay.
Yeah. And I think because, at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And we all share a nervous system that functions essentially the same way. We have different relationships with our nervous system. We certainly have different unique experiences, but at the end of the day, the skills are applicable across a wide range of people. And essentially, I chose this niche because it's the one that I identify with the most,
Mhm.
and I feel very connected, and I feel very, I feel like I have something that I can offer that group of people specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think about all of us, healthcare professionals, and like you said, we have that opportunity to maybe, if we're feeling that we need to change, we can change that. And when we're talking about caring for our parents, or maybe a special needs adult child or another family member, I mean, we can't walk away. I mean, they depend on us. And so I know that can be a struggle.
That can be really difficult. And I think that, and it's kind of, Pam, when I circle back in my own experience again, back to the idea of me realizing that switching jobs wasn't, in my particular case anyway, the answer. I needed to work on my relationship with stuff rather than it. And that's certainly, I would never in a million years say that is across the board the answer. I mean, sometimes workplace cultures are just toxic.
Right. And I guess I meant it in the way where, not that necessarily like, in many cases, it doesn't make a difference because like you said, it's something that's going on, internally, it's going on with you. But I mean, we still have that opportunity for that quote unquote escape. It's a door. It's a door that's there for us.
If you want to take it.
Yeah. And so, and in that situation with, a caregiver with a family member, that door isn't often an option, whether it's a good thing to walk through that door. Now that's another story, but for them, that door doesn't exist. So.
Right. And the thing that's really interesting about that kind of situation, where people really, they really maybe don't have the same options. They don't have the same options as, somebody who can walk away from a job, point well taken for sure. But then I also think about, and I think Viktor Frankl in his Man's Search for Meaning book made this really interesting remark that I kind of like really, I continue to go back to that and examine it, but it was something along the lines of the difference between liberty and freedom.
Mhm.
And his point being that, even when he was, in this camp, and all of the people that were in this camp, that they didn't have liberty, they couldn't walk away. Right. But what he realized and what he found during his experience was freedom exists in the mind.
Mhm.
And we can work with that. Right.
And
And yeah, so it's just, again, it's not a magic bullet by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's interesting to consider how plastic our nervous system and our brain is. So can we shift just enough?
Mhm.
You know,
and it truly is a labor of love, and to be able to have the tools, because of
exactly.
course they're going to want to continue to do that, but then they just need some other tools to be able to make
Exactly.
sure that they are
Exactly.
caring for themselves as much as they're caring for someone else.
Exactly. Yeah. So because, all of us, I mean, how many times have you heard when the oxygen mask drops in the airplane, you should put how many times have we heard that example for why we should take care of ourselves? But I also think that, that what I see over and over again is it's not a lack of education, right?
Mhm.
We all know,
Mhm.
we all know what we should be doing. And it's not like we don't know that. So I tend to spend some, not just introducing skills, but also, okay, so let's investigate why you don't do this.
Mhm.
Why don't you do what you should be doing? Kind of a thing. And so that tends to be more of what we do a deep dive into, because I can teach skills from now until the end of time, but if we don't sort out how to make that happen for ourselves in our day-to-day lives, then it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what a great morning routine should look like.
Right.
But do we execute that morning routine that we know that will put us in a great place to start our day?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yes, so I understand that perfectly.
Yeah.
Kathy, what have we not covered or not talked about that you feel important to share about what you do?
Well, I think really honestly, Pam, that we have, pretty much covered the breadth of the important stuff. I think the only thing that I would add is that I am really focused and really dedicated to, and again, this is what saved my bacon myself, was really, and this is a long-term investment in yourself, of course, but the idea of really recognizing, what am I here for on the planet? Not my job, not my whatever, but what is my value system? How does it guide me? How does it show up in all of the roles that I play in my life, not just at my workplace, but also as a sister, a daughter, a friend, a partner to somebody. It's really recognizing that once you start to really settle into that and have that trajectory and have that guidance system, honestly, the rest of it gets pretty easy.
So Kathy, tell everyone, how do they get a hold of you, or what's the best way to reach out to learn more?
Well, I'll tell you, I think at this point, I would love to hear from people just via email, if that would be, because it doesn't, what I would prefer them to not do, because I like personal communication a whole lot better, is, you can certainly go to our website, which is www.layinggroundwork.com, all spelled out, but that's going to come through the website thing, and it's going to be, whatever. So I would actually prefer people to just reach out to me via email if that's comfortable for them. And my email is Kathy, and it's Kathy with a K and a Y, at layinggroundwork.com. And I'm the one that I will answer everybody's questions, respond, whatever. I will answer personally, because that's really, really important to me.
And that's awesome. And too, when I share this video in the description, I'll make sure that I share, the email and the website, and encourage people to reach out via email. But
Oh,
this has
great.
been a great discussion. It's a great topic, and I think it's an extremely important topic for those, that are in a caregiving role, because in order for us to be able to continue to pour out of what we have to refill our cup. And
Absolutely.
so I think what you do is an amazing service. So I thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming out and sharing. And I look forward to speaking with you more on this topic.
that
So
sounds perfect.
thanks.
Thank you, Pam.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.